clean up after the storm. A call of "We're here" came from downstairs, and Misty stood up and ran downstairs. Moments later, Misty returned, leading 4 blonde-haired girls of varying ages. They all had one thing in common. Apart from their blonde hair, they bore facial similarities to their mother. "Hi, Mama. The doc will be right up. He's just bringing his medical gear with him," Janine, the eldest at 20 years, blurted out. "Right," Stormy said, looking at her daughters as she began giving orders. "You and Susan can help out in the kitchen. Get the food you brought and start making a meal these kids will remember. Andrea, you and Wendy can start distributing those donated clothes, making sure they're matched for sizes. It looks like the children definitely need them." "Okay, Mama," Janine agreed, taking her 1-year younger sister out to the kitchen with her to start preparing lunch. Susan, a year older than Wendy, took charge of their task to distribute the clean but second-hand clothes to the children. They made sure each child was bathed first, using the scented soaps and shampoos they had brought. The bath was half filled with hot water, limited to 2 children at a time. The youngest girls were bathed first, with Stormy directing her other daughters to manage the task. Once all the girls were clean, Stormy directed the eldest boy to do the same for the boys. Lunch was ready by the time Stormy, with the help of Wendy and Susan, had the children cleaned and dressed in their newly donated clothes. Janine and Andrea had worked miracles and managed to make pizzas using pre-made bases with cheese and tomato topping, simple but tasty. Fresh bread rolls with hot sliced roast chicken inside were also on the menu. The chickens had come from the nearest local barbecue outlet, still hot inside their foil bags. 3 huge bowls containing fresh fruit, oranges, apples, and bananas were placed on the table, along with glasses of fresh orange juice and several jugs for refills. As the children trooped down, they smelled the food before they saw it, and they hurried into the dining room. They stood in shock for a moment before slowly advancing toward the feast. Years of matron's controlling influence still showed its claws in the children as they waited until they were told to eat. "Eat, children, as much as you want, but please don't rush," Stormy called out as she helped one child peel a banana. "There's plenty for all, and we don't want you getting sick." Silence reigned, well, as much as it can with 60 children eagerly digging into their meals despite Stormy's warning. Stormy and her daughters went around, making sure all the children got a fair share of everything. Just seeing their faces as they tasted wholesome food for the first time and in quantities they had never seen before made Stormy's eyes mist over. Wendy sneaked a chicken roll off the table while her mom was otherwise occupied at the other end. Wendy had already taken several bites when Stormy caught her eye, raising an eyebrow. "I was hungry," Wendy complained, looking guilty. "Sheesh, child, don't you get enough food at home?" Stormy muttered, shaking her head. Some of the children who had finished their meal and were watching the byplay giggled. Wendy broke the roll in half and offered it to Susan, who, after getting a resigned nod from Stormy, quickly finished it off. Misty was looking after Robin, who was still upstairs in bed. Dawn had checked on her, noting the physical changes, but he was careful not to mention anything in front of Misty. When Misty went downstairs to get Robin's share of lunch, Dawn took advantage of the opportunity. "Robin, I see you've changed somewhat. Are you okay? I just found out why you are, like you are." "Your changes, have you got what did you call it?" "Oh yes, a doodle," Dawn asked, trying to reassure the frail child. Robin nodded, not sure exactly what to say. The doctor, guessing this was too much too soon, held her hand and smiled. "Is it okay if I come visit you sometime after you get settled at Stormy's?" "Yes," was Robin's short reply. Misty came up the stairs to the dormitory, carrying a platter, carefully balancing it so the drink wouldn't spill. "Here, climb on this food, Robin, and you'll feel much better," Misty urged, snagging a chicken-filled roll for herself. Robin did her best to comply with Misty's order, But whether Misty had piled too much food on the plate or if Robin's stomach had shrunk from lack of food, she couldn't quite finish it all. Still, she was feeling full again. Relaxing into the warmth of her meal, she soon began to drift off to sleep. Don put a finger to his lips, signaling Misty to quiet down as Robin settled into a light sleep. Stormy came up just then, checking on the newest addition to her family. She sighed, seeing Misty finish off one of the rolls from Robin's plate. Oh well, I suppose I can't blame them. They smell so good. I could do with one myself, she thought wistfully. How is she, Dawn? Stormy asked quietly as she neared the bed. She's weak, but Robin should be okay in a week or two, especially with the food you've provided, the doctor replied. I'll check back in a few days to see her progress. So, can we move her? I'd like to take her home with me today, Stormy continued. I've organized temporary staff to take over in shifts until we get everything sorted. Let her sleep. She should be strong enough to move soon. I'll come by on Tuesday after my last shift. Maybe I can stay for dinner, he winked hopefully. Why, doctor, I thought you'd never ask, Stormy quipped, smiling coyly. Speaking of which, do you want something to eat now? I'm sure there's plenty left. You could join me for a roll. Sure, that would be nice, Don agreed, trying to get the image of another kind of roll out of his mind. Don and Stormy went downstairs to get 2 chicken rolls for themselves. Stormy asked Janine to make 2 rolls and added that she and Andrea might as well eat too. Mama? We both nibbled on things while we were preparing, so Andrea and I are fine, Janine blushed, remembering her mama's comment to Wendy. Kids. Stormy snorted with a laugh. Well, okay, then make a roll for your other sisters, except for Misty. I think she's eaten enough. Stormy's lunch with Dawn was barely finished when a loud knock at the door heralded the arrival of 4 men. They brought replacement mattresses for the remaining children to sleep on. The old, lumpy cotton flock mattresses, most of which were stained, were thrown out and replaced with foam mattress bases. Some of the bed frames with sagging metal mesh support were discarded, while others were tightened, though few remained in serviceable condition. Most of the new mattresses were placed directly on the floor. The kids went wild, jumping on and testing out the new beds. The boys promptly turned the old mattresses piled in one corner of the dormitory into makeshift forts, while some of the girls tried using the old bed frames as trampolines. Stormy, her daughters, and Dawn watched in amazement as the atmosphere in the orphanage changed. The children were laughing, whooping, and generally in high spirits as they played among the discarded remnants of their old beds. Stormy noted that Maggie had curled up on one of the new mattresses placed on the floor and was sitting in a stream of sunlight coming from the window. Robin was dreaming that she could hear children laughing. It was a happy dream, and as she began to wake, she could still hear the laughter. Finally, she became fully aware that she was awake and could actually hear the sounds. Looking around sleepily, she smiled as she saw the children milling around the room. Misty and Becky were alerted to Robin's waking. Gently, they helped her up to be bathed. Robin had a moment's worry about them seeing her physical changes, but with her newfound energy, the short walk to the bathroom gave her time to mentally try again to arrange her body. Her efforts seemed to work, as there were no outcries from the girls when she was stripped and helped into the hot bath. One thing Robin had noticed was that her mind seemed more mature in full female form. Some of the more childish words she had used as Robin seemed inappropriate now. Terms like doodle had given way to more appropriate language. The girls had noticed, too. Robin, in pushing herself fully into female mode, had reverted to her previous shape. Her breasts had grown again, and her facial changes, which made her look older, hadn't gone unnoticed. Why do you keep changing like that? Becky asked. I thought I was imagining things, Misty added. Well, I don't care if she grows wings, and said, standing up for Robin. She's still my friend. I'm different, Robin admitted, seeing there was no further point hiding things from her friends. Different? Misty asked, as Anne and Becky exchanged knowing looks. I'm not like you or the other children. I'm part boy, Robin confessed. I can change into a boy or a girl. Robin began telling Misty about her life as Robin and her subsequent change into Robin after she got ill. Misty listened, amazed, as Robin unburdened herself. The words flowed like a torrent, almost overwhelming the listeners. Becky and Anne confirmed Robin's story, admitting that they had witnessed the change from Robin to Robin and adding their own experiences of seeing Robin in both forms, all while continuing to help Robin bathe. Wow! Misty exclaimed at the end. That's really cool. I wish I could do that. You don't hate me? Robin asked, sounding surprised. Robin, I think you're going to be the coolest sister I ever had, Misty grinned. I mean, I love my sisters, but this is special. Think of the fun we could have, she speculated, getting an impish look on her face. The arrival of more people seemed to subdue the children's antics somewhat as they watched the new arrivals warily. However, their fears were allayed when Stormy announced that these were the first group of volunteers who had agreed to help staff the orphanage until all of the children were placed. Introductions were made, and things began to move quickly from then on. New supplies of fresh food and other essentials were delivered and stored. The children even volunteered to help, which made everything go quicker. Seeing everything going according to plan, Stormy gathered all her daughters as well as her new additions and made preparations to leave. Some tearful farewells were made, and they all went out to climb into the van that Stormy had arrived in. Wendy and Susan decided to travel with them, leaving Janine to take Andrea home in her car. Dawn waited, while Stormy climbed into the van. After she rolled down the window, he said he'd give her a call about something important concerning Robin. Before she could ask more, he quickly kissed her on the cheek and strode away to his own car. Stormy flushed, but quickly covered her surprise by calling out to the children. Buckle up, kids. This is going to be a bumpy ride. Robin and her friends from the orphanage were glued to the windows as Stormy drove them back to her home. They didn't want to miss anything along the way. Their excitement grew as Stormy told them they were getting close, and their energy rubbed off on Misty and her mom. There were cries of surprise and a few tears as Stormy slowed and turned into the driveway that led to the house. Time to rebuild. The place was massive, a 3-story building that sprawled lazily across a large area of land that resembled a park. The 100-year-old structure looked solid and had withstood the test of time. The girls stared in wonder, and after getting the nod from Misty that this was indeed their new home, they broke down in an emotional outpouring of tears and happiness. It felt like a fairy tale, and this house was their castle, almost too much to believe. What's wrong? Misty asked, as Stormy pulled up to a halt. The girls, too choked with emotion to speak, wrapped themselves around Misty, Wendy, and Susan. Stormy wasn't left out for long as she opened the van's door to check on the girls. She was literally mobbed by 4 teary-eyed girls. It's so grand, like a dream that I don't want to wake up from, Robin choked, her voice thick with emotion. Stormy gathered them to her like a mother hen protecting her chicks. Her eyes gleamed with the threat of tears as she realized she had now become their mother. The girls had bonded with her, instinctively knowing that love and protection were within her caring arms. Janine and Andrea, having arrived home before the others, had quietly approached the group. They, along with Susan, Wendy, and Misty, knew that this was an important turning point in the lives of these emotionally starved children. Gathering together, they formed their own instinctive cuddle, realizing how lucky they truly were to be part of this family. They may have stayed that way forever if a little voice hadn't expressed her concerns. Kitten needs to go wee-wee. That quiet, innocent voice cracked them all up. Instantly, their mood lifted, and giggles followed until Maggie spoke again. Mama, me wanna go bad. Everyone burst into laughter as Stormy gathered the small girl into her arms and headed inside to find the nearest bathroom. Maggie smiled in delight when Stormy opened a door marked sandbox. The rest of Stormy's gang gently escorted Robin and Becky inside. The entrance of the orphans into Stormy's home left them gasping in awe as they slipped past, taking the new girl's meager belongings. Robin stood stunned, trying to take in the warm ambience of this huge house. It felt right, like she belonged. Moving to the couch, she sat there, gripping the material of the armrest, kneading it with her fingers as if to reassure herself that this was real. And Becky were too excited to sit still and wandered around admiring the knickknacks in the room. As the gang went upstairs to place their belongings in the appropriate rooms, and Becky tagged along, wooing and awing at all the pretty things they saw. Maggie, finished in the bathroom, scampered up after the others. Stormy smiled at Maggie's excited call of, "Wait for kitten, please. I'm hurrying, but my legs are little," as she climbed up the stairs. Stormy spotted Robin still sitting on the couch and, sensing something was wrong, went over and sat next to her. "Anything wrong, honey?" she asked gently, searching Robin's face for any clues. Robin twitched, startled out of her reverie. "No, just the opposite." "I can't believe this is all real," she answered softly, waving her arm around to indicate the room. Stormy relaxed and moved closer, giving Robin a reassuring hug. "It's all true, honey. This is your home, for as long as you want it." "Home? That sounds so nice," Robin sighed, sagging into Stormy's embrace. Stormy felt the tension leave Robin's slightly built body and rejoiced internally, knowing Robin had finally accepted the reality of her wonderful new situation. Stormy stood up and gently raised Robin from the couch, leading her to see her room. Robin's eyes glistened with emotion as she took in the sight of the room. There were 2 beds, one for or Becky, she guessed, though she didn't yet know who would choose to share with her. There were shelves with books, cuddly stuffed toys, and a few dolls. A vanity table with a large mirror stood between the 2 beds. A door in one wall opened to a closet, which already had clothes hanging in it. Stormy, seeing her surprise, answered her unspoken question. "Those are my daughter's clothes that they have since grown out of. Don't worry, you won't always be wearing hand-me-downs. When we get the papers officially endorsed, making you my daughter, we'll go buy you some of your own. But for now, these will be fine." Robin, not having much experience as a girl yet, wondered if the clothes would feel as nice to wear as they looked. She turned to Stormy and clung to her, tears running unbidden down her face at all this unexpected abundance. Stormy, on her part, found it hard not to weep as well, thinking about the reactions a few old clothes had on this poor girl and the reasons behind Robin's outpouring of tears. "God damn it," she thought angrily, "if there's one thing I'm going to do, it's spoil this girl rotten, if only to try and make up for everything she's gone through." Stormy reluctantly disengaged from the clinging Robin, saying she'd better check on the others. Robin moved to one of the beds and sat on it, content to look out the window and rest. Stormy went out of the room just as she heard running steps outside. Her reprimand about breaking the no running in the house rule died on her lips as she watched Becky and giggling, with Maggie laughing as she scampered to keep up, all being pursued by Stormy's daughters. Stormy smiled, thinking how nice it was to hear laughter from her new family. She walked sedately downstairs, not saying anything as the girls rushed past her in a frenzy of activity. "At least this household has one lady in it," she thought to herself, before going into the kitchen. Maggie, tired of the chase, eventually found a sunlit room that overlooked the property. She discovered some large beanbags scattered around the room and decided to take a catnap. She was soon asleep, curled up comfortably on the corduroy-covered bag, and wanted to go outside, so Misty volunteered to show her around her favorite spots, including a place some distance from the rear of the house where assorted fruit trees grew. Misty handed an apple straight off the tree. Meanwhile, Becky wandered all around the house, poking her nose into everything. Janine and Andrea went to lend a hand in the kitchen, knowing that with the 4 extra mouths to feed, their assistance would be needed. Back at Stormy's home, Robin was starting to feel hungry. As she got up to see if she could ask for something to eat, a call wafted up from below. "Everybody, dinner time, come and get it while it's hot." Robin went downstairs, her curiosity guiding her. Not having explored the place yet, she was still unsure as to where to go. Following the voices seemed to be the best bet, and eventually, she found herself in a huge dining room with a massive oak table, its extending leaves fully pulled out. Everyone was already there, except for Maggie, who was absent. Misty went out to find her, while Stormy and her daughters placed a huge ceramic dish on the table along with several smaller ones. Something smelled absolutely wonderful, and Robin, along with and Becky, were drooling in anticipation. Stormy waited until Misty returned, carrying a sleepy Maggie in her arms. At the smell of food, Maggie's nose twitched, and she slipped out of Misty's arms to run to the table. Everyone sat where directed, and Stormy nodded to Janine to begin serving. Robin watched eagerly, as did the rest of her sisters from the orphanage. A huge pile of creamy mashed potatoes was spooned onto everyone's plate. From another pot, a thick, aromatic stew was ladled over the potatoes. Robin could see actual chunks of meat, along with carrots, peas, and chopped onions. The gravy was thick and brown, and it steamed, giving off a mouth-watering smell. Janine added a small amount of chopped, steamed Savoy cabbage to the plates, and they were told to dig in. Robin couldn't believe that anything could taste better. Her taste buds exploded in her mouth as the tang of the stew, with its subtle flavorings, almost sent her into nirvana. She closed her eyes, chewing everything slowly, trying to savor it before swallowing. She started eating faster as her stomach demanded more, and soon her plate was clean, as were the others' plates. The low moans of delight didn't go unnoticed by Stormy or her daughters. The sheer pleasure the new girls derived from eating such a normal, comforting dinner was heartwarming.